He is one of the best in the business, and always enjoy every conversation I have with him. That is from on3.com. Ivan Maisel. Ivan, great to have you back. Welcome.
Thanks, Steve. I have to point out that, Stanton might be 340 home runs but behind Ruth, but Albert Pujols is only about 30 behind him. So,
yeah. How about that?
Yeah.
How about that?
Pay closer attention to that.
Yeah, I'd pay a lot closer attention to that. And not only is not doing bad for the Cardinals this year. All right.
No, it's a DH in the National League.
Yeah.
If it meant that we got to watch him for another year, I'm all for it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we are 11 months into name, image, and likeness, and of course the freedom of the transfer portal.
Yeah.
And yesterday,
run away.
Yes, and Ryan Day was speaking yesterday on NIL to a group in Columbus, and he said that he believes that it takes $13 million for him to keep his roster together. So is this model, in your opinion, sustainable?
This model, no, of course not. And I don't know what the alternative model is, and neither does anybody else. That's the problem. Nobody can really. Everybody I ask says, we don't know what we're going to do, but this model is not sustainable, and I believe them. And David Shaw said to me, the coach at Stanford, the guys we ask for money have money because they're good at business. And if we go and ask them for money to give to a player, and then that player leaves after a year, and we go back to them and say, well, we need more money for another player, they're going to say, those guys like return on investment. What happened to the player I gave you the money for the last time? It's problematic, and I'm not smart enough to know how to fix it. And so far, I hadn't found anybody else who is either.
No, I agree with you. I have no answers on this because when name, image, and likeness came up, Ivan, I thought that, okay, if a car dealership, hey,
right,
Ivan Maisel for whatever motors. Okay, great. And to me, that was name, image, and likeness. I never envisioned this.
And I don't think I don't think anybody else did, except, if you look at the history of college football, fans and coaches have done whatever they need, have stretched the rules in whatever shape they've needed to stretch them, and sometimes broken those, snapped the rules in order to win. And it is a unique feature of this sport, or maybe of college sports, because people in professional sports, by and large, don't break these kind of rules. And that's another topic of why pro sports seems to have discipline and college sports don't. But it's a chocolate mess right now, and nobody is against kids getting money, but I think everybody is for guardrails and rules. And I heard Rick Neuheisel say this week on his show, it's not so much, and what he was saying is, it's not so much that you're against the players getting money, but if you let this play out, all those schools that can't keep up, of the 131 schools that can't keep up, say 80 to 100 of them, if all of a sudden they just throw up their hands, that's a lot of kids getting scholarships that are no longer getting scholarships. Or what I think will happen now that we're talking about this is there will be something between the FBS and the FCS where you're not the 30 to 50 schools that are willing to pay $13 million a year or whatever that number will be in 10 years, but they still want to have a national championship and they still want to play football. you're not the Ivy League, you're not the FCS, but you're, and again, I don't know what shape that takes, to curb, the quote free market. So it's a problem, Steve, and if the NCAA had been willing to pull its head out of the sand,
yes,
over the last 10 years and give up, a quarter of a loaf or a half a loaf, we wouldn't, they wouldn't have made people so angry that they would have sued. And, I don't think, and we wouldn't be in this situation. But that's, pointing fingers at this point doesn't really do any good.
Right. We have seen basketball coaches, prominent ones, leave. Roy Williams, Mike Krzyzewski retired. Jay Wright surprised everybody, stepped aside. Is there a concern on your part that in this current system we might see some college football coaches look around and say, geez, I don't know about this?
Oh, they're already saying that. And, I wrote a column a couple of weeks ago in which I talked to Todd Berry, who runs the American Football Coaches Association, and he fully expects an exodus of coaches over the next, 12 to 24 months. That's my time frame. But he said, yeah, that's coming, because you've operated under one set of rules for your entire career, and now all of a sudden those rules they're not operable anymore. Somebody said this week in Destin at the SEC meetings that the younger coaches kind of just went, yeah, we'll adjust. And it was the older coaches, like a 70-year-old Nick Saban, saying, we need to do something about this. And, and I guess that's since time immemorial. A 39-year-old Eli Drinkwitz is just going to adjust. And, because he's not as fully invested in the way we've always done things. And that's a good reminder, for guys like me and you who have been around for a while, that the sport constantly changes. The SEC going to 9 games, looking as if they're going to join the 3 of the other 4 major leagues, and there'll be some rivalries that get pared back. But if we've learned nothing else over the last 30 plus years, schools don't care about rivalries, if they can balance the budgets by playing somebody else, And,
good point. Yep.
Yeah,
that's a really good point, exactly, because the next element that's going to come up, I think, news-wise, is going to be probably the Big Ten's television contract. And we know the SEC, their new TV contract with ESPN kicks into gear starting in 24. This contract would kick in for the Big Ten starting 13 months from now. What kind of separation financially is that going to create between the Big Ten, the SEC, and anybody else? And what do you think that potentially does for the sport?
Well, I don't think it's good for the sport as a whole if you've got, 30 teams in 2 leagues making double what everybody else is making, in terms of revenue. We've always paid homage to the idea of the level playing field and tried to shape the rules so the field can be as level as is possible. The playing field has never been level, and this is the logical conclusion to that. And I think where we're going is, as you quoted Ryan Day, if people are paying out that kind of money under these rules, it's going to be it'll be, let's say, the 30 teams in the SEC and the Big Ten, including Texas and Oklahoma, Notre Dame, USC, probably some teams in the Pac-12, but not all. A couple of teams in the Big 12, but not all. Maybe all, but I think we'd struggle to get past 50.
Mm-hmm.
And
I agree.
Yeah, but then it gets interesting as to who, are they still going to go play the whoever what are we going to call it, Division 1B? Are they still going to play those schools? Probably, but does that count the same? If you can only play one FCS team a year. How many of those can you play? It's because one thing about being in a 30 or 50 team division, if you're going to limit your schedule to mostly those teams, you're going to lose more than you lose now. So I don't know. It's all fascinating to watch the sport evolve, and I worry about whether the appeal of college football will be lost in all of this. But that just comes back to having faith in the fact that everybody roots for laundry, and
yeah.
I think I think that will withstand this because it's withstood everything else for 153 years. So I think that will survive, but I don't know.
College sports, above all, is in terms of the fans, because of the transient nature of it anyway, even in a normal cycle, 4 or 5 years, the fan bases have always gravitated to the front of the jersey and not the back. The back makes it more fun, but the front gets them in the building. I mean, that's how I've looked at it over the years.
Well, I think you're right, Steve, but one thing that worries me on that subject is I think basketball suffered when teams stopped being able to develop over 3 or 4 years, when when stars are one and done.
You are correct. Yeah, I agree with you.
Because nobody knows who's on a team and nobody pays attention until March, by and large. We're beginning to get there with football, trying to remember who's on what team now, and it's not a lot of kids that are successfully using the transfer portal. It's, what is it? I don't know, 200 or 300, maybe 4. I don't know. Not a lot. But still, somebody asked me a question about Michigan, and I had to go look and see who was still on the team.
Yeah.
And that's not, that's disconcerting. And maybe it's just, again, I've got to get used to this new reality, but I think the sport may suffer some because of that.
Well, I'm going to close out by saying to everybody out there, I think it's a must to get. It's entitled, I Keep Trying to Catch His Eye. And it's a memoir of loss, grief, and love. And, of course, Ivan Maisel about his wonderful son, Max. So, and your journey since. And I hope that in writing it, there was some of it was at least therapeutic.
Yeah, probably, Steve. It was not cathartic. People have asked me that, and I feel like I had to kind of get the work done before I was able to write it. And I didn't like the idea of it being catharsis, but it's really a story of Max died 7 years ago, and how I learned to live with grief and move on. And you just pick up as much of him as you can carry with you and keep going, because you really don't have a choice. And that's what the book is about.
And again, it's entitled, I Keep Trying to Catch His Eye, a memoir of love, loss, grief, and love. Ivan, as always, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you.
All right, Steve. Thanks. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Yep, same here.
Okay.